I'll do the number 7.
Number 11?
7.
Number 11?
7.
Sorry, I can hear you.
It's okay. Number 7.
Okay, number 11.
I think it's time we acknowledge the big elephant in the room. People don't really care for Volkswagens like that. You know, ever since that big thing that happened, Dieselgate, Volkswagen has kind of been on the downward trend, really because of a lot of things that they used to put in their vehicles, for all intents and purposes in terms of quality and refinement, have kind of got either on the stale side or on the boring side. But with the new advent of the 2025 Volkswagen Jetta, I think this might be a step in the right direction. What's up, guys? My name is Chris. Welcome to The Breakdown, where we talk about everything cars, news, and reviews. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you are not, welcome back. So Volkswagen just unveiled their all-new Volkswagen Jetta, and while seemingly it's not that big of a deal, it could be a step in the right direction for Volkswagen, as they have maintained their commitment to creating affordable, fun, and practical sedans. We're in a market where a lot of people pretty much ditch them and abandon them. And in this video, I kind of wanted to go take a mild deep dive into what the new Jetta is, what it is not, and how it may be a great proposition for those of you who are still looking for an affordable yet fun compact sedan. So with that being said, stick around and stay tuned, because you are now watching The Breakdown. Okay, so let's get into it here. So the thing is that the Jetta is a big deal for Volkswagen. Since Dieselgate, Volkswagen has had a really hard time trying to capture the masses. And partly it's because at one point or another, the marketing campaign back in the earlier 2000s was really huge for Volkswagen, especially with the advent of the Jetta and the GTI, which was kind of their bread and butter of sales, and the Golf as well. And so these compact sedans and compact hatchbacks, These compact hatchbacks have had a huge share of Volkswagen's core audience. And since Dieselgate, especially with the turbo diesel engines, it just seems as though they could not capture this audience. Fast forward into around 2020, 2021, Volkswagen introduced a new generation of Jettas, and to be frank, it was a bit cartoonish. I didn't like it. The lines were big and bulbousy, the interior looked like it was very cheap, and it seemed as though they were trying to focus all of their efforts on the technology to distract you from the fact that this car wasn't exactly eye-catching. Now, in terms of the new generation, the lines are much cleaner, they're much more refined, and give us some sense of Volkswagen hasn't entirely lost it. Back in the earlier 2000s, in those generations of Jettas, those were almost perfect and built with some of the highest quality materials that you could get in a compact sedan, whereas your Toyota Corollas and Nissan Sentras and Honda Civics were still giving you bargain basement materials, but just gave you the simplicity of reliability. In a world where a lot of SUVs are domineering, the new Volkswagen Jetta still holds a very important place in Volkswagen's lineup, as they are trying to find their way in between electrification and internal combustion engine, as this new generation will not have a hybrid that I'm aware of, which we haven't seen in some time. I'm gonna go ahead and let y'all know now, the last generation kind of aligns with what I was thinking about in terms of it just did not sell that well. For 2022, it sold a total of 34,000 units. By 2023, it only sold a total of 16,000 units. Now, it's not surprising because the sedan market has been really shrinking, but that's no excuse, whereas the Corolla and the Civic have been doing amazingly well for the last couple of years. This new Volkswagen Jetta, in terms of refinement, in terms of lines and design, it definitely gives that Volkswagen still believes that it is committed to giving us affordable compact sedans. Since Dieselgate, Volkswagen ain't been the same. And this model is a critical component to their lineup and their reputation, as they still try to find their way into the entry point, as the Jetta has always been the starting point for anybody wanting to get into the sedans. And I was reading some Reddit stuff, and basically some people made some really good points about how the Golf is no longer a thing, the Beetle is no longer a thing, Sport Wagon is slowly diminishing, and so the Jetta is kind of like the last stand that Volkswagen has in terms of sedans, especially since they got rid of the boring ass Passat, which nobody bought, and the Arteon, which is being discontinued. So it's just really, really critical that this Jetta does well. And in the last year, back in 2023, it only sold 16,000 units. So there's something to be said about whether or not this Jetta will adequately perform. But I truly believe part of that is because the materials used inside of the Jetta from the last generation were just not exciting, and the the lines just were not anything to get your eye, or was not eye-catching. Now, in terms of performance and engineering, the all-new Jetta uses a 1.5 liter engine that is new and improved, which is a bit bigger than the 1.4 liter engine that they used to use. In comparison to the 2 liter that is used in the GLI, which is the E8888, that still gives you a relatively quick 228 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. And we'll get to the GLI in just a minute. I still want to talk a little bit about the normal Jetta, which most people will typically kind of forget about. In the Volkswagen world, if you're not using the sport lineup or you're not talking about one of the SUVs, a lot of the traditional normal line sedans typically get forgotten about. And partly because Volkswagen has lost their luster for luxury, if you will, and kind of reserved that for Audi. Unfortunately, Volkswagen is one of those companies, while they are a massive brand in likes of Toyota, it just does not have the same level of confidence, and partly because of the reliability, which of course Toyota has been the household nameplate in terms of reliability, but we've also seen some damage there too in my last video, which I talked about with the Tundra. But nonetheless, the thing is that with the normal line of Volkswagens, they still offer a really good amount of value for the money. You can really get you a really good Volkswagen, either S-Trim, Sport Trim, or maybe even an SE for a decent amount. And a decent amount today is roughly about $24,000 to $25,000, where the average cost of a brand new car is roughly $48,000, probably going down some, but even still, Volkswagen has shown us that in this new Jetta, they're committed to trying to give us an affordable compact sedan. Now, into the base model before I get to the GLI. So, in this new iteration, the manual for the S and Sport trim have been deleted. They are no longer doing that. So, if you do want a 6-speed manual, which in a dwindling world where enthusiasts are truly shedding tears over the idea of getting a manual, basically, if you want a 6-speed manual, you will have to get a GLI or a GTI. And like I said before, if you truly want the non-GLI model and still want the manual transmission, you will be getting the 1.5 turbo. And if you don't want the manual, this also does come with a standard dual clutch transmission for most other trims. And pretty much if you want the sportier version, you typically want to opt for the GLI, which will come with an optional manual 6-speed transmission or a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and tell y'all, in terms of the shifter, I hate this shifter. I hate it. I hate everything about it. It looks like a toy car. I cannot stand that shifter. Of all of my gripes and complaints about the 6-speed for any Volkswagen that has come out in the last 5 years, I absolutely hate it.
I beg you, please stop.
And while the GLI is a formidable opponent against things like the Civic Si and the, we can even argue, you know,
what does compete with?
Even the Mazda 3 turbo hatchback, it still doesn't really ring the same as, let's say, a Golf R or even a GTI, if you will. And I'm gonna go ahead and throw this out here. Volkswagen has not been the same since the Mark V came out back in 2005. And the Mark 6 for the GTI. The GLI almost gets lost in the soup of Volkswagens, particularly because it is a sedan and it just doesn't have the same soul that the GTI does, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But now, in terms of performance numbers, this will probably get you roughly between the 6 and 8 second range, depending on which model you get. There is no turbo diesel as of right now, and for good reason. Like I said, Dieselgate has pretty much ruined their reputation, and as Volkswagen has tried to focus their way into electrification, they have deleted themselves from the hybrid segment for just now. And it kind of makes sense, considering in order to create a hybrid, you have to create an all-new platform, and we all know these car companies ain't really interested in doing any more that's going to cost them more money. Now, in terms of the GTI and its relativity to the GLI and the Volkswagen lineup, as well as the Jetta, the GTI has almost oversaturated the entire Volkswagen core. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the thing is that when you focus all of your efforts into one particular model for the sake of it being a volume seller, it almost ruins the essence of any other thing. And I get it, sell what sells, but I will argue that Volkswagen has been on the decline for far too long, particularly because they have focused a lot of their efforts between the GTI the Golf R, as well as the SUVs, particularly the Tiguan and the Taos, and even in some cases the Atlas, which most people hate, by the way, and the ID lineup, because the ID lineup is a big deal for Volkswagen in their electric space. But the real problem that comes along with this is that because Dieselgate costed Volkswagen so much money, it required them to almost water down every single model that they have to kind of recoup whatever they've lost. And I believe it was roughly about $25 billion that they had to pay out, which is monstrous for a company of their size. Now, in terms of this Jetta and what it will bring to the table, again, it is an awesome package, and it shows that Volkswagen is committed to providing something for the people, as it is the people's car and almost the last stand for sedans. Now, in terms of sales, I am not sure if this will do better. I can almost guarantee it will do slightly better than the last generation, because it simply looks better. The materials look more refined. You can get a lot more for a lot less. But I will say this much: the GLI is kind of their last hope in terms of performance sedans. Volkswagen doesn't seem to be very interested in making many more performance sedans, as they are moving into the electric space and pretty much going to focus their efforts on SUVs, which I hate. But if you're interested in one, you can expect this to hit dealer showrooms roughly in the next 2 to 3 months, given, order times and everything else. And if you're in the market for a new car but don't want to spend a lot of money, for the first 2 or 3 years, this will be a great bargain, and you probably will get a lot of incentives considering they're not selling that many. In my professional opinion, I would argue that this will do just okay, but nothing more. And the GLI has always been a low volume seller, so we can kind of expect that to go down too. But with that being said, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about this new Jetta. With that being said, until the next video, I will see you guys later.